Hello. Okay. Pa had fought Germany in the Second World War, where his left femur caught shrapnel and shattered, their last source of pride. His weekly disability checks, their only source of income. A week after Jody left, the Frigidaire stood empty and hardly any turnips remained in the garden. When Kia walked into the kitchen that Monday morning, Pa pointed to a crumpled dollar and loose coins on the kitchen table. "This here'll get you food for a week. There ain't no such thing as handouts," he said. "Everything costs something, and for the money you gotta keep the house up. Stove wood, collected, and wash the laundry." For the first time ever, Kia walked alone toward the village of Barkley Cove to buy groceries. This little piggy went to the market. She plodded through deep sand or black mud for 4 miles until the bay glistened ahead, the hamlet on its shore. Everglades surrounded the town, mixing their salty haze with that of the ocean, which swelled in high tide on the other side of Main Street. Together the marsh and sea separated the village from the rest of the world, the only connection being the single-lane highway that limped into town on cracked cement and potholes. There were 2 streets. Main ran along the ocean front with a row of shops, the Piggly Wiggly grocery at one end, the Western Auto at the other, the diner in the middle. Mixed in there was Cress's Five and Dime, a Penny's catalog-only store, Parker's Bakery, and a Buster Brown shoe shop. Next to the Piggly Wiggly was the Doggone Beer Hall, which offered roasted hot dogs, red hot chili, and fried shrimp served in folded paper boats. No ladies or children stepped inside because it wasn't considered proper, but a takeout window had been cut out of the wall so they could order hot dogs and Nehi Cola from the street. Coloreds couldn't use the door or the window. The other street, Broad, ran from the old highway straight toward the ocean and into Maine, ending right there. So the only intersection in town was Maine, Broad, and the Atlantic Ocean. The stores and businesses weren't joined together, as in most towns, but were separated by small vacant lots brushed with sea oats and palmettos, as if overnight the marsh had inched in. For more than 200 years, sharp salty winds had weathered the cedar-shingled buildings to the color of rust, and the window frames, most painted white or blue, had flaked and cracked. Most of the village seemed tired of arguing with the elements and simply sagged. The town wharf, draped in frayed ropes and old pelicans, jutted into the small bay whose water, when calm, reflected the reds and yellows of shrimp boats. Dirt roads lined with small cedar houses wound through the streets, around lagoons, and along the ocean on either side of the shops. Barkley Cove was quite literally a backwater town, bits scattered here and there among the estuaries and reeds like an egret's nest flung by the wind. Barefoot and dressed in 2 short bib overalls, Kia stood where the marsh track met the road, biting her lip, wanting to run home. She couldn't reckon what she'd say to people, how she'd figure the grocery money, but hunger was a pushing thing, so she stepped onto Main and walked head down toward the Piggly Wiggly on a crumbling sidewalk that appeared now and then between grass clumps. As she approached the Five and Dime, she heard a commotion behind her and jumped to the side just as 3 boys, a few years older than she, sped by on bikes. The lead boy looked back at her, laughing at the near miss, and then almost collided with a woman stepping from the store. "Chase Andrews! You get back here! All 3 of you boys!" They pedaled a few more yards, then thought better of it, and returned to the woman, Miss Pansy Price, saleslady in fabric and notions. Her family had once owned the largest farm in the outskirts of the marsh, and although they were forced to sell out long ago, she continued her role as genteel landowner, which wasn't easy living in a tiny apartment above the diner. Miss Pansy usually wore hats shaped like silk turbans, and this morning her headwear was pink, setting off red lipstick and splotches of rouge. She scolded the boys. "I've a mind to tell y'all's mama about this, or better, your papa's, riding fast like that on the sidewalk, nearly running me over. What you got to say for yourself, Chase?" He had the sleekest bike, red seat and chrome handlebars. "Raised up. We're sorry, Miss Pansy. We didn't see you 'cause that girl over yonder got in the way." chaste, tanned with dark hair, pointed at Kia, who had stepped back and stood half inside a myrtle shrub. Never mind her. You can't go blaming your sins on somebody else, not even swamp trash. Now you boys gotta do a good deed. Make up for this. There goes Miss Ariel with her groceries. Go help her carry 'em to her truck, and put your shirt tails in. Yes, ma'am, the boys said as they biked toward Miss Ariel, who had taught them all second grade. Kia knew that the parents of the dark-haired boy owned the Western Auto Store, which was why he rode the snazziest bike. She'd seen him unloading his big cardboard boxes of merchandise from the truck, packing it in. But she had never spoken a word to him or the others. She waited a few minutes, then head low again walked toward the grocery. Inside the Piggly Wiggly, Kia studied the selection of grits and chose a 1-pound bag of coarse ground yellow, because a red tag hung from the top, a special of the week, like Ma taught her. She fretted in the aisle until no other customers stood the register, then walked up and faced the checkout lady, Mrs. Singletary, who asked, "Where's your mama at?" Mrs. Singletary's hair was cut short, curled tight, and colored purple as an iris in sunlight. Mrs. Singletary's hair was cut short, curled tight, and colored purple as an iris in sunlight. "Doing chores, ma'am," I said. "Well, you got money for the grits, or don't ya?" "Yes'm." Not knowing how to count the exact amount, she laid down the whole $1. Kia. Mrs. Singletary wondered if the child knew the difference in the coins. So as she placed the change into Kia's open palm, she counted slowly. 25, 50, 60, 70, 80, 85, 3 pennies, because the grits cost 12 cents. Kia felt sick to her stomach. Was she supposed to count something back? She stared to the puzzle of coins in her palm. Mrs. Singletary seemed to soften. "Okay then, get on with you." Kia dashed from the store and walked as fast as she could toward the marsh track. Plenty of times, Ma had told her, "Never run in town or people think you stole something." But as soon as Kia reached the sandy track, she ran a good half-mile, then speed-walked the rest. Back home, thinking she knew how to fix grits, she threw them into boiling water like Ma had done, but they lumped up all together in one big ball that burned on the bottom and stayed raw in the middle. So rubbery she could only eat a few bites. So she searched the garden again and found a few more turnip greens between the goldenrod, then boiled them up and ate them all, slurping down the pot liquor. In a few days she got the hang of fixing grits, although no matter how hard she stirred, they lumped up some. The next week she bought backbones marked with a red tag and boiled them with grits and collard greens and a mush that tasted fine. Kia had done the laundry plenty with Ma, so knew how to scrub clothes on the rub board under the yard spigot with bars of lye soap. Pa's overalls were so heavy wet she couldn't wring them out with her tiny hands and couldn't reach the line to hang them, so she draped them sopping over the palmetto fronds at the edge of the woods. She and Pa did this 2-step, living apart in the same shack, sometimes not seeing each other for days, almost never speaking. She tied it up after herself and after him like a serious little woman. She wasn't near enough of a cook to fix meals for him. He usually wasn't there anyway, but she made his bed, picked up, swept up, and washed the dishes most of the time. Not because she'd been told to, but because it was the only way to keep the shack decent for Ma's return. Ma had always said the autumn moon showed up for Kia's birthday, so even though she couldn't remember the date of her birth, one evening when the moon was swollen and golden from the lagoon, Kia said to herself, "I reckon I'm 7. I remember when I was 7. Pa never mentioned it. Certainly there was no cake. He didn't say anything about her going to school either, and she, not knowing much about it, was too afraid to bring it up. Surely Ma would come back for her birthday, so the morning after the harvest moon she put on the calico dress and stared down the lane. Kia willed Ma to be walking toward the shack, still in her alligator shoes and long skirt. When no one came, she got the pot of grits and walked through the woods to the seashore. Hands to her mouth, she held her head back and called, "Kyo! Kyo! Kyo!" Specks of silver appeared in the sky from up and down the beach from over the surf. "Here they come. I can't count as high as that many gulls are," she said. Crying and screeching, the birds swirled and dived, hovered near her face and landed as she tossed grits to them. Finally they quieted and stood about preening, and she sat on the sand, her legs folded to the side. One large gull settled onto the sand near Kia. "It's my birthday," she told the bird. I think I gotta stop there. It's a long video.